Hello pre-service teachers. For this instructional video, I'm going to show you how to do the Finding Wonders poem. This is also a right-to-learn research activity, just like the Houses of the World if you lived here, but instead of doing an informational text, we're going to do a poem this time. This matches TEKS from both English Language Arts and Social Studies so that you can fully integrate the two content areas. We're working on composition and we're pulling a little bit from the writing process, but we're not going to take this all the way through where we really focus on editing and revising. We're more worried about planning that first draft and developing that first draft. If you'd like to take it all the way through the writing process in your future classroom, that's a-okay. Just remember to allot time for that. We're also working on composing literary text because your poem falls under the category of literary text. And then we're pulling from inquiry and research because I have some questions already generated for you that you're going to answer on a topic. You're going to develop and follow a very brief research plan, and you're going to identify and gather relevant information. And then it connects to the English Language Arts citizenship TEK because you're understanding the characteristics of good citizenship as exemplified by historical figures and other individuals. And there are specific figures for each grade level that we'll get to in a minute. Remember, this is also going to connect to that social studies skills TEK where students have to compose things like maps, poems, reports, and the like. The inspiration for this text comes from the book Finding Wonders by Janine Atkins. She writes about 3 young female scientists, and she's done a lot of research on these 3 scientists, but then she embellishes that research with her imagination, and she does that through poetry. So this is actually a novel in 3 parts, but she uses poems to tell the story. So let's look at a sample of one of her poems from the books. It says, "What she is told. Women don't cross the ocean, at least not unless married to merchants or missionaries. No one has sailed to another continent just to look at and draw small animals and plants. Some travel to claim land for kinds, find treasure like gold, or collect bark, berries, and pods to spice cakes. But no one has sailed from sheer curiosity about the world. Voyagers are in danger of shipwrecks, hurricanes, sea monsters, or fires from lanterns tipped by high waves. Those who survive under sails may die of peculiar fevers in the New World. They might be eaten by jaguars. Maria is told, 'You're too old. You can't go alone.' But nothing will stop her now." And there are a few things I want you to notice about author's craft in this text. If you look at lines like "women don't cross the ocean, at least not unless married to merchant or missionaries," they're providing context for the world that this scientist grew up in. And although the author doesn't know for sure that Maria experienced this, Atkins uses what she knows about the time period to set the scene. And the context is very important here because it lets the reader know the odds Maria was up against as a young female scientist in the 1800s. In these lines below, "just to look at and draw small animals and plants," the author is weaving in facts about Maria, about what Maria did as a scientist. And some of the lines are drawn straight from history and straight from that research, and others get embellished a little bit with the author's imagination. There's a lot more going on in that mentor poem, but those are really the 2 things that I want you to pay attention to. One is provide a little context, set the scene for the person that you're going to research. And 2, pull in some actual facts from research and then embellish the rest. So here's a student sample from a previous semester. This document is available inside the packet that's attached to the Dropbox this week, and you can read her poem there. Notice that she's got a paragraph at the top about who Lizzie Johnson was, and then she goes into her poem. The second sample is about Lydia Mendoza. The student also includes a biographical paragraph at the top so we know who Lydia was, and then she goes into the poem. So there are a lot of people that you can choose from to do your research and write your poem. What I did is I went through all of the social studies TEKS K through 8 and I picked out all of the names that pulled up. So I want you to choose one of these names and I want it to be somebody who you don't know already. So if you already know who Bill Gates is, you're not going to write a poem about Bill Gates. If you know who John Hancock is, you're not going to write a poem about John Hancock. Choose somebody like Juliet Gordon-Low or Ellen Ochoa and see who they are, do a little research, and write a poem. There are also a few organizations like the WASP and the Four Chaplains. You are welcome to do those as well. So to begin your research, I've compiled a list of questions for you to answer. You can use any books that you have. You can use Google's going to be our best friend, obviously. And don't think that this research is super intensive. It's just some general information gathering. So you're going to answer the question, who was, who was Juliet Gordon-Low? Type, where were they from? Why are they considered an important person in history? What interesting facts did you find out about them? Can you find any quotes from them or about them? Because maybe you can weave those into your poem. Or is there any moment in their life you would like to focus on for your poem? Because your poem, it doesn't have to cover their entire life. It can cover just a small component of their life. Remember that you get to embellish and fill in the missing pieces. So maybe you guys know about Christopher Columbus, and I'm talking about his voyage on the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. And I don't want to talk about the whole voyage. I want to talk about that moment that he arrived on shore. And so my poem's only going to be about that moment. So type your answers to those questions in the document. And then start to construct your poem. I want you to have a biography paragraph that's 2 to 3 sentences about why that person or organization you chose was important, and then compose your poem underneath. Really, all I'm looking for is that you're taking elements of fact from history, from your research, and you're weaving them together to do something creative and using your imagination to embellish a little bit. Those are the 2 components that I'm looking for on your trait checklist. You don't have to have a rhyme scheme. I'm not worried about having a certain number of lines, nothing like that. Go back to the mentor text and the 2 student poems to see kind of what it is that I'm looking for. When you're finished, submit it to the Finding Wonders poem Dropbox in Blackboard. If you have any questions, shoot me an email or give me a call. I'll see you next video.